an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Afterparty, Season 2, Episode 1, Aniq 2, the sequel. In this episode, well, we have a wedding that I thought maybe the groom died before, but it turns out no, he has been killed after. And I'm really bummed. I liked this groom so much, and I wish somebody else had been killed. If there's a few people that I would be fine with. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode and for being really patient with me having to move stuff around all the time. It's tough, guys. When something happens with my computer, everything is so tightly scheduled that I have very little room to move around. And so it's just really appreciated when people can be chill, because I do my best, but sometimes it gets weird. Ari says, yay, I'm so excited you get to cover the second season. Also, yeah, Apple TV continues to be an awful interface. Totally. I'm not going to start our episode off by complaining about this. I did that before starting recording. But I really do just want to know who the fucking brain trusts are behind Apple, Hulu's interface. Even Amazon Prime's interface is trash. Netflix seems to be the only company that has it figured out. And I get that, like, maybe you don't just want to copy, but maybe you should just copy them. Maybe they did it right and it's fine to just do what they do. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, all right. So this episode, I'm going to have to pull up a, like, character list, and I am not going to look at the dates that people, but I'm going to need help keeping people's names straight. And this, at least, we've got Zooey and Aniq. But everybody else is new. I actually didn't expect this. I'm really curious if any of you were aware. We get sort of a clean slate. I mean, I guess that Tiffany Haddish is here again. And she's really the only one. So this new mystery, they've put a different spin on it by, instead of it being somebody that everybody didn't like, everybody could have wanted dead, this is somebody that seems really quite harmless, except for the, like, bride potentially wanting to inherit his money. And I'm gonna go ahead right now, and I'm going to say, not that I think Zooey's sister did it, but that I wish she had done it. Because there's just something about the person that everybody immediately, like, dismisses as a suspect that makes it super fun when it turns out that they are the one, actually. Now, I don't really mean it that I want her to be the one. It's like, it would be a bummer for Zooey. It would be a real bummer for her to have, like, wanted his money. There's a lot about it that would make me very, very sad. However, I really want a surprise, and that feels like the most surprising answer you could come up with. The main issue that we always have in mysteries is having to plant red herrings, and whether or not you're going to be, like, kind of obvious about them and make it clear that they are red herrings, or whether you're going to make it subtle enough that the audience kind of, because, like, if you make it a red herring feel too heavy-handed, there goes another reason to completely dismiss it. And so for me, the way that he is killed, the groom, and again, I'm looking for a list of names here, guys. I'm having such a hard time finding one. But the way that he is killed and the way that his mother behaves, it really feels like there's a red herring pointing to his mom. She says something about how, like, the dog, unlike her husband, refuses to die. And there's just a lot of comments that she makes, and the drama and the brooding quality of this woman who is so unpleasant. Oh my God. But she, I feel, is being painted as keep an eye on her. And part of me is like, okay, that feels like a massive red herring, but also, are you doing this so that we don't pay any attention to it? Are you doing this because you want us to dismiss it because she is the killer? Like, just wondering, you know? So, all right. Let's get into the thing. Oh, thank you. Ari is in the chat over here trying to help. Edgar's the groom. Isabel is mother of the groom. Grace is the bride. Ari coming through. Clutch. Thank you, Ari. Because, yeah, I usually am able to find a list on IMDb, and it's giving me, like, an episode summary. I do not need that. And the episode summary does not have, like, a link to the... You would think it would, but no. Anyway, okay. So, we start things off, and you guys... This was a tough episode for me. And the reason why is that it leans very hard on cringe humor. And the kind of, like, anxiety that I have difficulty finding funny. This is a thing for me often. Like, anytime that you have got something that that everybody is, like, mad at a particular person, it just triggers anxiety for me so badly, especially when you know that that person is, like, really good-hearted and doing their best, and it just keeps backfiring. And that's the definition of what's going on in this episode. Aniq is meeting Zooey's parents for the first time. He is planning to propose to her this weekend. Now, just for future reference, everybody, do not go to a wedding for the weekend and propose while you're there. I understand Aniq's feelings here, but I think this is the wrong move. The thing about this is, I think what he's imagining is that Zooey would enjoy sharing the moment of the proposal with her family. But this is her sister's moment, and if things hadn't gone the way that they do, I feel Grace would be justified in feeling like her moment got stolen a little bit. And this is something that is talked about a lot online, like the kinds of do's and don'ts of weddings. Some of them, in my opinion, are absurd. Just like the kinds of things that I'm like, what? Who even knows that's part of the etiquette? Who's ever heard of that? It's truly, it's almost obnoxious, you know? But then there are things that, like, we all agree on. Don't wear white, for example, unless, like, with me, my wedding gown was black. So, fine, wear white. I don't care. That's fine. But if you don't know that, or if you believe they are not wearing black, just don't do it. And the proposal in the midst of a wedding, that is something that has been caught on TikTok a lot of times. And people have mostly agreed that it's tacky. It's stealing the thunder away from somebody else. It's their day. They have paid so much money, put so much work into planning this one day that is supposed to be about the two of them. And you're taking it and making it about you. Now, I'm not saying that Aniq was about to propose in the middle of the wedding, but it's the reason that they are all there. And I think unless they were planning to spend a full week together after the wedding, and there was going to be some downtime in the midst of which it would feel like we had a cool down period from the wedding itself, then maybe fine. It doesn't seem like that's the way he was thinking this would go, though. So I'm just sort of side-eyeing him for that. Then we have Edgar himself, and he is definitely, like, autistic coded, and I just adore him. Like, he just says what's happening in a way that I always do find very funny. Like, it's awkward, but awkward in a very endearing way that, to me, can be a real tension breaker, actually. And he has this pet lizard that chills on his shoulder, and she eats these little, like, white chocolate chips, which are her favorite thing, even though he does not like them, which is correct. White chocolate is trash. And I just think he's charming, you know? And he is the one that clocks that Aniq is a good guy. He is seeing past all of the flubs and fuck-ups and can tell that Aniq is a good person. And that counts for a lot for me. So, again, super bummed that he's the one that's killed. And when Aniq arrives, the first thing that happens is he didn't realize that Zooey's parents were already going to be there. He evidently thought that there was going to be some more time for him to collect himself. And when he sees them, he gets quite flustered. And this causes him to forget to put the car in park. He leaves it in neutral. So he's in the middle of talking to them. Grace has given him a tea cozy that's supposed to look like him. Great talent, Grace. What you've made is impressive. I'm not pretending that's not, but what? What are you doing? And I love that when Aniq agrees, like, oh yeah, it does look like me. Wow, thank you so much. Edgar says, you're very polite, in a moment that truly got me cackling. Like, this is him just kind of throwing shade at his wife a little bit, well, future wife. And I was just sort of like, well, damn, Edgar, shit. I just don't understand. First of all, giving somebody a tea cozy is already kind of a weird thing to do. If you know somebody well, for example, giving me a tea cozy, genius. I love tea. I have several teapots. I love holding tea parties. Like, that's my entire fucking brand, is like cute little shit to do social gatherings around. Yeah, give me tea cozies. Or those little things that sit on a candle to keep the teapot warm. Do you guys have that? Because if you don't have one, get on that. It's a little like stand, and you put a tea light or 2 tea lights inside, and you light those up, and then you just prop the teapot on top, and it just keeps that tea warm. And, you know, the tea doesn't necessarily taste great if it's been sitting on there for several hours, but if you need just an hour and a half to pass while you slowly drink your pot of tea, it's brilliant. It's so great. So, yeah, there's also... Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going on to tea cozy things, but there's like a tea cozy thing that you put the cozy on, but the spout can poke out, which I think is far superior. But I also see the fact that like those aren't necessarily going to keep the tea as warm as ones that cover the whole pot. So it's a real sort of, you know, you got to figure out what works for you. But a tea cozy is a strange gift. And then making a tea cozy that looks like the person who's going to be using it. I love tea and teapots, as you have just heard. I could never use a tea cozy that is meant to look like me. I couldn't do it. It would be so weird. There's no way. I would probably find another way to use it, like sew up some of the openings in it and use it as like a weird little bag or something in my house. But I couldn't really, you know, come on. So anyway, his car starts to roll in the background. And again, I'm going to need help with names here. Lauren's here. Hi, Lauren. But Senor Chang from Community is here. And he has this thing going on with this truck that is very highly decorated. And of course, Aniq's car can't just roll anywhere. It has to roll directly toward the car that's like extremely clearly like somebody takes a lot of pride in, you know? So it's agony. It's agony to watch this happen. Like, I just hated this so much for him because he runs after it. And as he's running after it, what happens is he drops the tea cozy, and I guess like he trampled it or the car ran over it. Something happened and caused the tea cozy to get shredded. Oh, God. You know, like, I'm so sorry, bud, but Jesus Christ, you couldn't have done worse. Like, I literally can't think of a way that this could have gone worse for him out of the gate other than, like, genuinely hurting somebody, you know? So I'm trying, oh my God, you guys, I'm so sorry because I know that this is tedious to listen to, but I have the subtitles on and yet they are not playing. Even though I'm playing the episode and it's like saying that they are enabled, there's no subtitles showing. So normally what I do when I'm recording is I play the show in the background and I try and quote directly what's going on. And there's no way for me to do that because it's like, what the fuck, Apple? Why are you like this? Why are you like this? I want to know. I'm trying to go up into settings and see if there's something there. So I think the thing with Senor Chang is that he sells like a type of ice, which I believe there's a mention of like Hawaiian ice or Italian ice. Whatever it is that Aniq says offends him deeply and sets him off in a way that's sort of like, this dude is being unreasonable, but also Aniq kind of stepped in it. And not on purpose, obviously, but it just really felt like Aniq is just trying to make innocent conversation. And it doesn't feel like he has learned enough about these people to be able to tell what is innocent and what isn't. You know what I'm saying? Okay, here it is. I'm just trying to find it. This is Aniq. Vivian and Feng. That's his name. The King of Bing. Taiwanese shaved ice. Kind of like Hawaiian shaved ice, right? And as soon as Aniq says that, both Zooey and her mother get this expression of like, oh no, here we go. Taiwanese shaved ice is smooth and delicious. Hawaiian shaved ice is sharp like knives. I now really want to try some Taiwanese shaved ice. Guys, I have realized over the past couple of years that I fancy myself a foodie, but I have a real blind spot when it comes to Asian food. And I mean, and I'm talking East Asian and West Asian. I have had Indian. I have had Vietnamese. I only a few times though for Vietnamese, and otherwise I have really not had Asian food, like a variety of it at all. I've had Korean once, and there are so many ingredients that I don't know the names of, don't recognize, couldn't tell you what the flavor profile is. And it's made me really like want to expand my horizons on that a little bit. And there's a really lovely mystery series, and I'm going to look up the author, but it's part of what made me realize how like completely blinkered my understanding of food is and how Western it is. But okay, so it's Homicide and Hollow Hollow by Mia P. Manansala. And there, I think, are 4 of these books so far. But they're murder mysteries, so if you are into that. And she is Filipino, and they own a Filipino restaurant. And so there's a lot of discussion about the desserts that she's making, the food, and ingredients listed or mentioned that I have never tasted as far as I know, or if I did, I was not aware that's what it was when I had it. And so anyway, don't want to go too far off into a tangent about this, but just like Taiwanese shaved ice, what is that? I don't think if there's even anywhere around here to get that. Dallas, maybe. Dallas can have a surprising array of things, so maybe I'll give it a shot. If I do, I'll let you guys know, because probably I'll be doing it shortly. It's getting hot here already. So anyway, the car crashes into the thing. It's a whole fucking, and the way that this is structured is that we see them pulling up. The chat between him and Zooey about how like they're just going to relax and have fun. Immediately, like just a slam in the editing to the dead body of Edgar. And then the introduction of each character in a sort of like Clue character profile sort of way. Then credits. And then we have him contacting Tiffany Haddish's character to replay for her everything that has been going on. And I just really I do not want this again. I mentioned this last season as well, but Tiffany Haddish just posted this like goofy shit recently about what's going on in Palestine. And, I am just really disappointed in her. Let me just say that. She's a delight in this show. I really enjoy her. And every time I get reminded what a fool she seems to be in real life and how like problematic, tactless, and shitty, it's such a complete bummer. So I just had to mention it because I literally just saw this post from her last night and was like, oh, come on, I'm starting the show tomorrow. Oh, I don't want to know this. So I just had to mention it and make all of you suffer with me. So we have like that storytelling device where he's explaining his perspective on how everything happened. And he's doing it over the phone instead of in person, which I appreciate because Tiffany Haddish's character is like, she knows he isn't going to be the murderer. Like, she trusts that. So seeing him in person to make sure isn't necessary. Everybody else is somebody that she would need to be able to sit across from and see the way that they react to things and how they, tell a story. But she doesn't need to do that with him. So it turns out, by the way, she quit the force and she's trying to write a book about the murder of the last season. And she's telling, I think, her agent or maybe publisher that the writing is going super well, but there's a real sense of like, is she fucking with them? She seems to me to be quite sincere in saying it's going great, but I think I'm supposed to think that she's lying and hasn't written anything yet. But she doesn't seem nervous when talking to this person to tell them that everything is going great. She doesn't seem like she's feeling put on the spot at all. It really feels like she is so relaxed and just having a great time. And I want to believe really badly that she's actually doing a lot more writing than they trust that she is. And of course, immediately with this, she's like, oh yeah, and I'm going to write about this murder as well. That'll be my sequel book. But we don't find out why she quit the force. I am going to go ahead and assume that whatever happened with her throwing the last detective sort of under the bus with the reason why she didn't want to work with him backfired big time, because that's just the sort of thing that cops don't like. They don't want a split. They want a united front. And her telling on one of them is telling on all of them because they all do this shit. So I'm sort of taking it for granted that that's what happened, but we haven't been told any of that yet. So, all right, I've got to move this along. So, Aniq gets seated at this table with this, like the singles, and this is so infuriating. So Edgar's mother just is like, oh, it's only family here. You're not married, so you're sitting where you belong. And I have seen, when I was planning my wedding, I didn't run into this sort of issue because I didn't have a family table. We had such a small grouping that everybody sat at the same tables. But when people are planning weddings and they have to account for the plus ones of others, it's really tricky. And even though it feels shitty that Aniq is getting left out of everything, because we know how serious he is about Zooey and that he is intending to ask her to marry him, these people don't know that. And so even though I hate this for him, and I think this woman's being really bitchy, and she is leaning into that, I can't help but understand not wanting to include him in, for example, like the family-only photo with the bride. You don't want, in God knows, like 3 months, for your wedding photos to have somebody in them that's no longer a part of the family. You know, it's, I really, I'm trying to be like as objective about this as I can, but there are a lot of folks out there who have gone through this sort of thing where a loved one coming to their wedding insisted that their significant other be included in all of these things because they swore that this person was the one. It didn't work out. And now they are littering all of these photos, and you have to either find a way to like cut them out, Photoshop them out, or just deal with the fact that there's somebody that maybe now you actively dislike who harmed your loved one, perhaps, in the photos with you. It's like, it's a big deal, these kinds of pictures. They're the photos that people frame and keep for generations. So I really do get him being hurt. But also, dude, just back off. Just back off. It's not about you right now. It's just not. So anyway, I never expected that I was going to take her side in anything, and putting it at the singles table, like, that does suck. And I had this once where I was at a wedding where Owen was a best man, and he was understandably taken up a lot of the time with taking photos. He wasn't actually seated somewhere separate from me, but most of the beginning of that evening, the first at least hour and a half after the ceremony, I was alone, and it was so uncomfortable because all of his other friends that were supposed to have come to the wedding didn't show. So it was like I didn't know anybody, and I was sitting at our table. It was only out of the 12 people who had been supposed to be seated at that table, 2 others besides me and Owen showed up. So it was me across the table from this elderly couple who couldn't hear well and who were not pleasant and kept talking about how soon they could leave without causing offense because they didn't want to be there. And that was my night. It was really, really awful. So I fucking sympathize with being seated somewhere else, but also, like, I don't really know what to tell you, dude, because honestly, seating arrangements at weddings, as much as we put so much thought into them, and they can be really important, that's not that long a portion of the wedding. You sit down, you eat, and then it's dancing, everybody's milling around and visiting. Just deal with it for an hour, just deal with it. It was awful for me and I hated it, but I got through it. It was fine. So he sits across from this guy. I don't know who this actor is, but he has this very like wannabe detective thing going on. And he is later on talking with Zooey about like cases that he fancies himself a private detective, but there's a real air of like, nobody's actually genuinely hired him for anything. And he hasn't actually solved anything. And when he says that he is assisted with certain cases, he means that he irritated the police, but did nothing of consequence. Again, if I'm going to talk about what I would like, is I would like if this dude actually turned out to like be genuinely kind of good at what he does. If it were, he comes across as such a blowhard fake, but then you find out that he is out here actually doing shit and just nobody takes him at all seriously. That would be really funny. And I would be sort of into it. But as of right now, it just looks like he's a goof. And I love when Aniq sits down. He thinks that Aniq is one of Grace's exes. And when he says that he's here with Zooey, this dude's like, oh, so you're Zoe's ex? And he's like, no, I'm her current. And he says, oh, I guess I just assumed she was with that tall glass of sexy water. This is the rehearsal dinner, I think. And he's pointing to her seated next to this tall, suave Englishman who is Edgar's business partner. This guy, I love the way Fedora says he calls himself Sebastian, probably a fake name. I hope it is. I hope it's a fake name, because this guy actually being named Sebastian might be a little bit too much. And Sebastian, kids, is awful. I hate him so much. I love him in terms of like, this is a dude that, and this is a very tight rope to walk, right? When you're writing a character like this, You have to write him so that he is incredibly irritating to the viewer, but the viewer can also understand why this guy's charm is working on everybody around him. So you have to trust the viewer to like see through all of that, but also get it, why he is well liked and popular. And I feel like they've really done a pretty good job. He is so... Part of what really got me about him is the way that he like got in front of everybody for this speech, and he makes fun of Aniq's driving and parking and everything. When I was sort of like, does everybody know about that? It feels like this is only directed toward the immediate family that was here when that happened. And that to me reads as, I'm trying to put you down personally, Aniq. Like, I'm not saying something as in a fun teasing way. I am not playing to the crowd and something that we all know about, that we can be in an inside joke together. No, he is targeting Aniq because it seems like he is sort of, I don't even know that he's interested in Zooey. It feels more like it's just a fun game to see if he can like get Zooey interested in him, you know? So that combined with the fact that he is just so full of himself. And he's also really threatened later when it looks like Edgar is vibing with Aniq, and Edgar's lizard likes Aniq. And there's just, Sebastian seems extremely cranky over the fact that Aniq is so effortlessly winning the seal of approval that he himself has not managed to secure. And he feels like another, like, if we're going to put top 3 suspects for Edgar's murder, in terms of what I feel like I'm being shown, it's Edgar's own mother first, Sebastian second, and Grace third. Part of the thing with Grace is the fact that it just happened the day after. Like, he died on their wedding night, I guess. That just looks extra bad. Whoever killed Edgar could have done it before the wedding, and then it wouldn't have looked like this for Grace. So I like to think that Grace is just too smart to poison him the night of their wedding, because how obvious does that seem? There's also, though, later on, Aniq says that he saw her put something in Edgar's drink. And I sort of wondered if maybe he had been, like, is it possible that this poisoning was accidental? Is it possible that he's on, like, a medication and something interacted with it, and the murder was not intentional, but this is a murder mystery? I don't know. It seems like there are murder mysteries where it turns out the death was accidental. That's certainly a thing. And I don't dislike that as like a premise, but I feel like for this show, it's probably going to be on purpose. So, oh my God, I forgot about this fucking dude talking about cryptocurrency. And I love Aniq. You know what? I think I'm going to try and change tables. And so we have him going over there and basically inserting himself in this conversation, and really awkwardly, they're talking about some story that Sebastian's telling, where her uncle replies with like, wow, playing hardball. And Aniq just shows up and says, yeah, love some hard balls. You guys, this was so difficult to take. I really had a hard time. So eventually they let him take Sebastian's spot, and Sebastian gets put on the singles table. He's the best man. So, like, I don't love it. It's just sort of, because we're in Aniq's point of view here, we're meant to think that this is a reasonable thing. But it, to me, really felt like, Aniq, guy, you know, if Edgar's fine with it, I guess it's fine, because it's his best man. But yeah, Aniq also does a weird, like, kissing hands thing here. And so that becomes its own little joke that goes on for way, way too much. And, you know, he doesn't, like, I'm not saying that he kicks this guy out. It's more that Sebastian says, who wants a drink? And he gets up and Aniq slips in to the spot that he vacated. So, oh yeah, here it is. Every flower you see before you is from Hannah's Garden of the Bizarre. Some of these are actually psychotropic. Aniq knows what I'm talking about. Now, this is what I'm talking about with the interaction. And when Edgar is starting to seem drunk, he's talking about how everybody is a devil. And I sort of felt like that is coming across as a hallucination here. Him saying this, like, the problem that I have with this is that it's not the type of thing people say when they're drunk. Nobody's like, I can see it through you all. You're all devils, every one of you. Like, that's not something people... So the fact that nobody seems alarmed by him speaking this way either means that he, like, gets this way sometimes, which would be surprising, or people are leaping to a conclusion of drunkenness because there's nothing else that has occurred to them as a potential issue here. But to me, that really, that really just felt like a giant waving flag. Of course, here comes another thing with Aniq talking about, like, whether he has done drugs or not and having to defend himself, and Isabel, Edgar's mother, accusing him of being a drug addict and also worming his way into the table and everything. So at this point, we have the introduction of Grace's uncle, whose name is Ulysses. And apparently it took a lot of time for Edgar to find this guy. This is Feng's brother. I do not believe for a moment that he's actually called Ulysses. I think that's probably something that he goes by at this point. He is insufferable. And I am really, really looking forward to more of what's going on with this guy. He literally rides in on a white horse and greets both of his nieces with big hugs, super cheery, very excited to be here. And he was introduced as the Funkle, the fun uncle, but Feng clearly takes issue with that and says that's what they call him, and slams his drink down and walks out. He just leaves. And I'm like, ooh, juicy. What's going on there? I need to know. I want the deets. I love these, like, little family rivalry things. Excuse me. So yeah, he says, I left you many moons ago, niece, but know this, you, your sister, you always have had my heart. And then to Edgar, normally when one of these ultra-rich earth rapers shows up to my proverbial doorstep, I'd try to take him down, not lift my glass to him. But I hear he makes Grace happy. However, if you break her heart, I will slice your throat with the curved blade of my Yemeni... I don't know how to pronounce that. And then he tries to say he's kidding. But he's pretty sinister when he says that. And I love when he says, I'm kidding. And then follows it up with, or am I? And Edgar just says, I don't know. I love Edgar. I'm so sad he's dead, you guys. What a bummer. I would kind of enjoy it if it turned out that, like, Edgar wasn't really dead. He just looked dead, and then surprise. So yeah, he has brought this horn of a drink. And you know what's funny? When he starts talking about this, like, drink, the first thing I thought of was fermented mare's milk, which is another traditional drink that is, I think, like, oh my God, like, I keep wanting to say Quebec. You guys know that is not what I'm talking about. Oh my God, it's where the Dalai Lama lives. But that was the first thing I thought of. So when it turned out to be like fermented camel's milk, I was like, oh, okay. So I was actually pretty close. And his niece drinks it, and she doesn't seem disgusted by it. She seems sort of like, that was unusual. Interesting. Okay. I really have to admire that she drinks it without asking what it is, because I would literally never in my life, do you hear me? It could not happen. Just telling me to eat something and I don't know what's in it. Not even, no. No. Tibet. Thank you, Lauren. Jesus fucking Christ. Earlier, Lauren said, I will say, remember the format of the show with the mind movie genres. That's what I was sort of thinking. I don't know when you typed that. I'm sorry I missed it. But I'm sort of wondering if Aniq is going to come across kind of terrible from other people's point of view. It's because, like, you know, we'll see. But anyway, Edgar doesn't want to drink it because he says that his lizard definitely doesn't like it. The smell of it's making her sick. And if she doesn't like it, he definitely won't like it. So, sorry, but pass. And I admire him just immediately being like, no, I'm not doing that. I get that this is a whole thing and that many people would consider it rude for me to refuse in front of everyone, but I'm not really concerned about that. His lizard's name is Roxana. I need to remember that. So eventually Aniq says, well, I'll drink it, because Ulysses says drinking it will mean you're a part of our family. Again, Aniq, I understand that you want to be part of the family, but this is really embarrassing, sir. He's offering the groom. Okay. You are nobody in the scheme of this wedding. And you're being like, oh, I'll drink it instead of the groom? Why? Who asked you? You're not part of this, sir. What are you doing? So he makes the mistake of drinking it without checking what it is. And then he spits it out and he gets it all over Zooey's mother. It's really hideous. And I enjoy when he's telling this story to the detective. Well, I don't know whether I should call her that. Danner is like not a detective anymore. But when he's telling her, he tries to be like, I know, rom-com stuff, right? Ha ha. And she's like, no, that's just really disgusting, actually. Ugh, gross. So he and Zooey are rubbing one another's shoulders in the room. He is stressing very much about what's going on. And she says, don't worry, they don't hate you. They don't hate anyone. And he's like, well, they hated Brett. And Zooey says, oh my God, Brett, that's it. Have you noticed how strange Grace is acting? And Aniq says, not really. And honestly, if you don't know somebody very well, it can be hard to know what's strange for them, because you know what I mean? So no, he doesn't. He suggests that maybe everything that he has done is the reason. And she's like, no, I noticed it at the bachelorette party too. She's acting the same way I did right before I married Brett. Like she knows she's about to make a huge mistake, but she doesn't know how to get out of it. And Zooey says, I just feel like they're complete opposites. Grace is romantic and she loves antiques and magic and she's like a weirdo. And Edgar is an awkward tech guy who goes to sleep at 9:30 every night and has a weird lizard pet. Now, you know, just from the outside, that makes sense to me, that match. Like, I get that they seem like opposites, but they're both weirdos. And sometimes weirdos just need to find the other weirdo that's, like, gonna vibe with their weirdness, but not necessarily their exact interests. You know what I mean? Owen and I can be like this. Like, we like a lot of the same things, but we also have, I'm really into visual art and cooking, and he does not give any shits about that. It's so uninteresting to him. He is super into tabletop games and comic books. I couldn't care less. But we still have a lot of things in common. We still have a lot of, like, respect for each other's interests. It's not a problem. So I think that she is picking up on something. I'm sure she knows her sister well enough, but I don't think it's about what she thinks it's about. And I can't help but think, like, you know, I think I'm being pointed to, oh, maybe she's like planning to murder him and kind of doesn't want to go through with it. Maybe that's part. I have no idea. I can't even like hazard a guess on that. So, I love Aniq, you know, just because someone's a little awkward and dorky doesn't make him not great marriage material, right? And I love he climbs up on the bed and lays on his side. Could you imagine me sitting here in my finest anime-inspired robe and a samurai sword, also from an anime? And so he just says, hot. I am wondering if Zooey is reading into things with Edgar because maybe Zooey herself senses Aniq is going to propose and isn't interested in remarrying. And I am completely making this up like out of thin air. But she doesn't react poorly to him saying that he is husband material in this scene. She seems like, charmed and thinks it's endearing. So I didn't get a sense of like panic from her really. But I just sort of thought maybe she's projecting her own baggage about marriage onto her sister and doesn't realize that she's doing that. Again, just completely made up. And she says, I'm just saying it's an odd match for Grace. Do you think I should talk to her? And he says, well, I think you love your sister, so maybe just feel it out. And she says, okay. And I couldn't help but think, like, the thing to say is no. Like, look, I have trouble keeping my mouth shut. So I'm going to say a thing that I might not necessarily actually stick to myself in the situation. But I'm going to say, as a good rule of thumb, unless the person your friend is going to marry is actively abusive or seems dangerous in some way, do not tell them they shouldn't marry this person at their weekend wedding getaway. Just don't. Like, that is just so rarely going to go well. The only time that I feel like this makes sense to do, again, other than like abuse, is if you found out that this person has been cheating on them, for example. And unfortunately, so many people would actually go through with a wedding anyway that, I think that if you think a person isn't a great match, you should tell them if they're not super serious yet and you're worried about them. I did this with my friend Sydney. They were going to get married to somebody that had some issues with like drug use and drinking too much. And they didn't seem to appreciate Sydney the way that they deserve to be appreciated. Sydney is like a magical, brilliant human being, one in a million type. And I didn't like the guy. I felt like he was really somebody that could easily turn quite bad. And I think Sydney heard me out very respectfully. And I think that I was not the only one to voice concerns, which was part of what made them take me seriously. There were other people also kind of like, are you sure about this? But it actually wound up being one of those rare times when a person saying, you don't know them very well, though, was actually true. Because this person wound up cleaning up his act and becoming a much better partner and a better person. And things are going really well between the two of them. And they've been married for years now. So, like, sometimes it pays to have some faith in people. And it's understandable to just kind of be like, that is a rare thing, because it is. But I said what I needed to say. I didn't expect Sydney to just do what I said. I was giving them my perspective, and what they chose to do was their business. It was difficult to watch them get married because I really did feel like they were making a mistake when they did it. But I trusted their judgment, and I was right to do that. They knew enough to be able to make a good call. So I think that, long story short, if you are really close to somebody and you know that they trust you, and if they especially are asking your opinion and want to know what you think, you should tell them if you think a person isn't a good match for them. This isn't the time, especially when you're doing it based on you're not liking the person's the fact that you don't see them as compatible. That's not a good enough reason. And it's especially the main thing that it feels like with Zooey is that her sister hasn't been with Greg or I don't know why I just called him Greg, with Edgar for very long. I think she said it's 6 months or something. So it's a pretty quick wedding. And to that end, I definitely understand it. But it's too late. You're at the wedding weekend. Stop. Don't say anything right now. It's not going to be taken well. She mentions here, have you seen my phone charger? My mom needs to borrow it. And Aniq says maybe I can lend her mine, and that way I can apologize to her. So he goes out and he's like, because everybody's in separate cabins. It's this huge, gorgeous property. And he comes across Feng and, oh my God, Zoe's mother's name. I don't think I even know it. But Ari's in the chat saying, yeah, him drinking that milk was definitely a wild move and kind of out of pocket. Thank you. It really was. But he comes across Feng and Zoe's mother arguing in the garden. They're standing next to this gorgeous, it looks like a flowering cherry tree. It's pink blossoms and this huge weeping willow tree that's it looks really old. I am assuming all of this is a set, but it really looks so pretty. And Feng is yelling, I'm not going to let him ruin our family. And I think it's Zoe's mother who says, it's not too late. There are things we can do. And at that point, somebody comes running from behind Aniq. And it looks like he's either completely naked or at least he's wearing teeny tiny undies and has his hands in front of his crotch. I think maybe we were supposed to believe he was naked, but I'm pausing it. And so I can see either he's wearing tiny undies or he has a tiny undie tan line, which if it's a tan line, amazing. I love it. But yeah, this dude runs by. They don't really say anything, so it didn't seem as if they recognized the person. When I saw him, my instinct was that was Sebastian, but they know Sebastian, and I feel like they would have been like, Sebastian, what are you doing? And they aren't reacting that way at all. So no idea who this could be. And of course, this guy ran out from behind Aniq. So they turn and see Aniq fucking kneeling in the grass, thinking that he's just standing there overhearing things, purposely eavesdropping. And he tries to explain that he was not part of the thing, but he's just like, I came to give you this phone charger. And her mother snatches it out of his hand. Again, with the whole I'm going back to the cabin to sleep with your daughter. Tons of awful explanation for that. Oh God, it's so painful. So eventually we have the talk between Grace and Zooey about how there's no evidence that Grace is guilty and it could have been anyone. And Grace says, I mean, even you could have done it. And Zoe's like, what? And she says, you never liked Edgar. You made that very clear. And now we're not getting married. So you got what you wanted, which is really shitty. The way that she's just immediately going, you didn't like him, so you must have murdered him. Well, she's not saying you must have, but there's she's being really, really unfair. And she just puts her stuff away and stalks off. She's wearing, I want to point out, a piece of clothing here that was puzzling to me because it looks like she's in her wedding gown. And I don't know why she would be, because this is the day after. It's a like low square necked lace number with tons of beading. And I don't honestly remember what she was wearing as the bride, but this is, I hope, not what she was wearing, because it's pretty terrible as a wedding. I think it's an ugly dress. It has like a look more like a nightgown. So maybe it's supposed to be that she was wearing this like as the morning after sort of, you know what I'm talking about? Like a lot of brides will have a whole trousseau of clothing for their entire weekend and for their honeymoon and stuff. And so maybe that's the thing, is that it was like part of her overall ensemble. I'm trying to see the point here where like the accusations are flying, because no, she's still wearing it. I don't know. I don't know if that's it or not, man. Okay. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. This dude with the fedora, I do not know what his name is. Forgive me. But he comes in right as like Grace gets up and stalks out. Looks like our girl might be suffering from a little hypoperfusion. What does that mean? Anybody know? I think actually I'm going to stop it. And he says, to the layman or laywoman, we call it shock. Okay. I forgot that he just explains it immediately. And he's got this rock star drink, which really just adds a layer of like, I don't want to say like goofiness exactly, but there is a certain type that I associate with drinking rock stars. And it just feels really funny that this guy is drinking it. And as he's doing it, he's like tapping it to make sure it doesn't explode and everything. He's treating it like it's a beer. And it's like, it's a fucking energy drink. And he's doing this whole performance. I know what you're thinking. This is not my first rodeo. You would be right if by rodeo you mean murder. I'm part of a Reddit guild. We have our hands on a bunch of these cases. We've helped solve the Modesto Strangler, the Bisbee Beast, even that guy in Stanley, Idaho, who we think may have hit his wife's body in a beanbag chair. This dude, guys, desperately curious what he's fucking up to. And most of the stuff that he's saying, by the way, when he's talking, he isn't even like making eye contact with Zooey. He's treating it like it's, he feels like he's in another movie. It's like a very main character syndrome kind of behavior. Lauren says Vivienne, I think, Vivienne is Zooey's mother. Okay. I think this gets addressed in another episode, not a spoiler, but just not yet addressed. Not sure, I missed when that was typed. Sorry, Lauren. But Lauren is telling me that the fedora is Travis. This was a fun inclusion by the creators, who were known to pop into the Afterparty Season 1 Reddit theory threads. Oh, that's cool. That's a fun thing. I wish that there were a way to like do that without getting spoiled, you know, like go back and see, but it's too late. Her dress was not yet addressed. Lauren, okay, thank you. I like knowing that there's like an explanation for it though, because that at least makes me feel like she doesn't have terrible taste if it's being specifically mentioned. But yeah, this dude, he says, irregardless, oh, the worst, another piping hot case grows cold. And he sits down next to Zooey, who, like, all of her body language is veering away from him as much as possible. So, this breakfast in the morning, oh my God, you guys. It is just, there's all this fruit, there's piles of bagels and eggs and baked goods and whatnot. It looks lovely. And this is when the little dog starts to kind of go after Aniq. And it's literally ankle biting. going after like his pant leg and pulling on it. And Isabel is like, oh, that's Colonel. Just kick him. Just kick him. And this is such a thing. You guys, I had this happen one time. My neighborhood has, in the last year, actually calmed down quite a bit. But there was a long period there where there were so many stray dogs. I don't know what the fuck was going on. And I myself got bitten once, and it wasn't even a stray. It was somebody's dog that leapt the fence, bit me, and then leaped back. And it was like lightning. If there wasn't another witness, I wouldn't have known what bit me. And so I have now a justifiable fear of strange dogs in a lot of cases. When I'm at the dog park, it's fine. Mostly I'm okay. Every now and then, though, a thing happens that gets me very on edge. And having been bitten, you run up against these dogs, and one of them was somebody's, like, it was standing in its own front yard and being very protective of its yard. I was just trying to walk past the house, and the dog is menacing me, and I'm like on the other side of the road. I saw the dog, got nervous because there was no fence. It wasn't like there was no leash. There was nothing holding it in place. So I go to the opposite side of the road, which was apparently not far enough. And the dog starts to go out into the street to come at me. And its owner was just like, just shove him. The owner standing literally 10 feet away. Probably only like 5 feet from the dog. Doing nothing. And telling me to just shove the dog. Are you kidding me? What? I was so angry, you guys. I was like shaking by the time I got home because it was a combo of being afraid of getting bit again and rage at this person. And they were clearly like drunk. So I was like, I'm not going to shove your dog. Can you do something? And they were like laughing and not really hearing me and treating it like it was a joke. Anyway, I just know this feeling, and it was a much bigger dog than this. So she's telling him to just kick it, and he doesn't want to. But eventually he does. And of course, as soon as he does that, Feng walks in and is like, did you just kick that dog? Oh my God. And he tries to explain Isabel told him to do that, but she's gone. She dipped. And it really does feel a little bit like he got set up. I was just like, oh my God. Did she do this on purpose to make him look bad? So Feng asks Zooey to go pick up the relatives from the airport. Here we have it's just so awkward, you guys. Aniq offers, long story short, he brings back the wrong people. These are not their family. They just said that they were trying to find the winery, and this is a vineyard, so he thought that it was the thing. They're thinking they're being brought to a wine tasting. And the whole thing with this, it's so unfortunate because Aniq has like been practicing Mandarin and Korean to really try and endear himself. And that's a lot of effort, he's doing something. And it just gets wasted here, Plus he wants to go shower so that he can like not smell like fermented camel milk anymore. But Ulysses is in the shower, and I was sort of wondering here. I'm gonna put this out here. Complete sort of I'm going with sort of tropes, mystery tropes. He isn't in that shower. I think he has the shower going at a tape of himself singing in the shower, and that he's not there, and that he is buying himself time while he does something else. Purely because this is like a thing a lot of the time where somebody makes it seem like they are in one place so that they have an alibi or whatever. What would that alibi be for? Genuinely no idea. Because this isn't when the murder happens. So he's putting something in place. It could be totally innocuous. He could be out there banging somebody's wife, and that's the only reason that he needs to, you know what I mean? But I'm just going to hazard a guess that this is not what it seems to be at first glance. I should mention too, when Aniq picks these people up, Travis comes running out and yells, Aniq, come with me if you want to know the real truth about the truth. We gotta save Grace. And Aniq just says, I'm good. And Travis runs off. What is it that he thinks is happening? I really think Travis might be onto something. I really do. Like, I buy it. I don't know. There's something, something. Lauren says, I'm going to try to make a list of your theories. I love it, Lauren. Thank you. I love that. I'm so over time. I'm realizing that. Oh my God, I didn't even notice. But there's been so many things to mention here, Of course, it turns out that fucking Sebastian went and scooped up their family. And he just every time Aniq looks bad, Sebastian swoops in looking hot, doing the thing correctly that Aniq should have been doing. And there's something awful about the moment where there's like a box that he has to put over Edgar and Grace's heads during the ceremony because Edgar has a fear of public speaking. And Aniq has such a hard time like handling it. And Sebastian is able to remove it and set it aside with total grace. And a part of me was kind of like, I'm sorry. I don't buy that Aniq would have that much trouble. Aniq is jacked. Like, he's got a little tummy to him. He's, he's not like a rock hard body. But he's got some muscles on him. And I just don't think he would struggle with this. Especially in comparison to Sebastian, who seems... I don't want to call him like spindly. I'm sure that he is also jacked in his way, but I'm just saying. And this is when Aniq goes and helps with the tying of the bow tie. And there's this weird, like, a display in Edgar's office. He's getting his cufflinks out of the, what do you call it? The vault. And there are these crypto keys in there. Crypto keys. No idea what this is. And it's interesting because earlier Travis asked him, do you know anything about cryptocurrency? Which I took in the moment to be just a silly, like, this guy's a bit of a fucking loser. And so he buys into cryptocurrency bullshit because it's a scam. And now I'm like, oh, did he know something? Was he trying to have like a real conversation with Aniq about some shit that's like happening and Aniq dismissed him because he just seemed like a sad loser? I think that might be what's going on. But anyway, yeah, there's apparently like millions of dollars in that vault. This is the scene where Aniq and Edgar really bond, and it's just like uncomfortable for Sebastian, who normally can get everything right, but he is so disingenuous a person. I think that's why whatever is between him and Edgar, and the fact that he is Edgar's best man, it feels wrong to me. I don't see Edgar vibing with this guy to the point that he wants him to be best man. I would see Sebastian worming his way into being best man somehow. You know what I'm saying? It just feels like, and anybody who is neurodivergent knows what I'm talking about. You can tell when somebody isn't sincere, and it can be extremely off-putting. And some of us are much better at masking and also being insincere, honestly, so that we can just go along to get along. And then there are some people who are not able to do that. It's a lot of energy and they don't have the interest in doing it, which I honestly don't blame them for. And I kind of feel like, yeah, I'm not surprised that Sebastian hasn't managed to sort of connect with Edgar the way it seems like Aniq is doing. But anyway, so he also clocks the fact that Aniq is going to propose to Zooey this weekend, blah, blah, blah. Then we have Zooey, and she tells Aniq that she told her sister not to marry Edgar, and is like, what do I do? And she believes that she can make it right with the what do you call it? Maid of honor speech. But of course, that gets completely ruined. I'm trying to figure out how. Oh, you know what? I'm looking at the pictures of Grace here. That was her wedding gown, but in the context of the actual wedding, it's way cuter. I'll say that. It works much better. I think it's like kind of horrible anyway, but it's not as bad as it looked in the other, you know? So Edgar gives Aniq his mother's purse to hold. And as he is handing it to him, he drops the purse. It's like, to me, it very much looked like he purposely dropped it. It felt unnatural. Fang in the background is blaming Aniq for this. I don't think he should. That wasn't Aniq's fumble. It was clearly Edgar's fumble. And something pops out of the purse that could be just a compact, or it could be the round gold thing that had been in the safe. I don't know what that was, but it kind of seemed like that might be significant because of the way the camera just hangs on it for a moment. And oh my God, the fucking way that the lizard turns around on his shoulder and like gets him in the face with her tail. That was really funny. I forgot about that. So anyway, okay. Here is the actual wedding, and Aniq has a weird encounter with a waiter who he's like very shitty about how bad the food looks and gets in Aniq's face about calling the food poke. This is such a weird interaction, you guys. He's supposed to like look after Roxana, and she gets away. So there's a whole thing with that. Roxana just turns out to be on Edgar's shoulder a little bit later. And he's just like, how did that even happen? And I was sort of wondering, is it possible that somebody could switch out a lizard and like, it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? Is this just as simple as, oh, the lizard ran away? Or is it something more than that? I don't know what to think about it. So we also find out that in the midst of their first dance, Edgar got a notification on his wristwatch, and he left in the middle of the first dance. And we have no idea what that was about, but truly it had to have been really important, and he handled it extremely poorly. It was just an awful thing to watch her just standing there alone on the floor and everybody watching like, what do we do? You know, Isabel is making her speech. She's clearly like stoned on something. She is barely making any sense or attempting to make any sense. It's bizarre. I don't know what she's on, but I sort of felt like it seemed like she was the kind of loopy in a way that Edgar is later. And I was like, is the drug she's taking what Grace puts in Edgar's drink later? So this is when Zooey attempts to make her speech, and there is this horrible sound that keeps happening to interrupt her. It's a very weird scene because nobody seems to know where this sound is coming from. And nobody's like really looking for the source of the sound. Everybody is just looking around vaguely like what's going on. At first I thought it was the mic, and it becomes very clear quickly that's not what it is. And Edgar eventually just like stands up and goes in front of everybody to say, can whoever is making that sound please stop it, because Roxana hates it. And it does stop. But they don't know where the sound's coming from. This is an extremely loud, obnoxious noise to not know what the source of it is, and for nobody to go looking for what the source of it is. If it's this loud, you have to feel it coming from a particular direction, and nobody seems to be able to tell. So I don't know what to make of that. It's a weird sound. It's a weird reaction. All of this is very strange. And Edgar just basically like steps in on Zooey, takes the mic away, asks them to stop making that sound, and then hands the mic away to Sebastian and doesn't let Zooey finish her speech, which she takes just really personally. And a part of me kind of felt like, Edgar, are you actually sabotaging her on purpose somehow? Why didn't it felt like Edgar is tactless, but he isn't oblivious like that. And it felt to me like him not giving her the mic back was really on purpose. I'm wondering if whatever's been happening with his drinks has already begun to kick in at this point, and that's part of what's happening here, you know? And anyway, so yeah, this whole evening, I love the way that we have Aniq off to the side looking around at the crowd. There's this really beautiful bar area that's painted in this dark hunter green. It's so pretty, you guys. I loved the whole vibe of this place. But he eventually goes and sits down with Zooey's mother, and he tries to sort of connect with her. He says, I just wanted to apologize. I just really want you to like me. And she says, I can see that. Do you know who you remind me of? And when she says Brett, I was genuinely like, what? And he says, how so? He was always trying to impress us, so concerned with what we thought of him, when all we wanted was for him to care about Zooey. And she gives him this really disapproving look. I thought that was interesting because I feel like it's pretty clear Aniq cares about Zooey. I don't know what more he could be doing and why she seems so disapproving. Of course people want to impress their in-laws. They just do. And I'm sure Brett cares what they think, but in a different way. Brett was just, he was who he was. I feel like the vibe has to be somewhat different with Aniq. And he pays so much attention to Zooey. I don't know. I am so over time. I really do have to wrap up. I'm trying to see if there's anything important that I kind of forgot. But eventually, okay, I'm right at the end. So yeah, this is when he says, you're all devils. And he leaves. And we come back into the present. And Aniq is like, why do you sound so loud? Oh my God, are you in the house? And yeah, she strolls in. And she basically claims that Aniq blamed Grace for the murder, even though that is not what happened. So that is the end of that episode. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, guys. Really am. I love covering a mystery. It's just really fun. All right, I have to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much. Thank you, Max, for your patience. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.